Shalom, my friends, and welcome to Weekly Parsha with Yehuda Yisrael. This week's Parsha is Ve'etchanan. This is a very special Parsha for many reasons, as you will see. So let's get right into it. I entreated the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your strong hand, for who is like God in heaven or on earth, who can do as your deeds and your might? Pray, let me cross over and see the good land that is on the other side of the Jordan, this good mountain and the Lebanon. So this is, Moses obviously wants to be able to go and see. But the Lord was angry with me because of you, and he did not listen to me. And the Lord said to me, is it enough for you to speak to me no more regarding this matter? So Moses really wanted to go into the land of Israel. Obviously, this was the whole destination of the journey. He says, go up to the top of the hill and lift your eyes westward and northward and southward and eastward and see with your eyes, for you shall not cross this Jordan. So Moses ultimately did not get to go in, but he was able to look. But command Joshua and strengthen him and encourage him, for he will cross over the before this people, and he will make them inherit the land which you will see. And we abided in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Now we're getting into Deuteronomy 4. And if you know my channel, you know I love me some Deuteronomy 4. It's one of my favorite chapters to use to debunk Christian arguments. So let's get into it. We'll get a little light version of it. You're going to hear more of this from me next week. Or in the next video that I make after this, we'll deal with this a little more. And now, O Israel, hearken to the statutes and to the judgments which I teach you, in order that you may live and go and possess the land which the Lord your God of your forefathers is giving you. Do not add to the word which I command you, nor diminish from it, to observe the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor. For every man who went after Baal Peor, the Lord your God has exterminated from your midst. But you who cleave to the Lord your God are alive, all of you this day. I believe this is what we say before we read the Torah. Va'atem hadvekim b'Hashem Elohekechem chayim kulchem hayom. So this is what we say before the Torah is read. So, next chapter. Behold, I have taught you statutes and ordinances as the Lord my God commanded me to do so in the midst of the land which you are coming to possess, and you shall keep them and do them. That is your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of the peoples who hear all these statutes today. Only this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that God is so near to it as the Lord our God is at all times that we call upon him? And which great nation is it that just statutes and ordinances as this entire Torah, which I have set before you this day? Now here is where we get explicit commands from God how we are to worship him and how we are not to worship him. So pay attention, Christians, and anybody who thinks that they have a monopoly on what God can and cannot do versus what God will and will not do. That's very important. But remember, God is giving explicit commands to Israel here, so this isn't some anecdotal angelic appearance. This is God's explicit commands to Israel. Okay? That would take precedence over Genesis 18 or Exodus chapter 3, where one patriarch or one individual is getting, a message from an angel, right? This is explicit commands to Israel. With that said, let's move on. But beware, watch yourselves very well, lest you forget the things that you saw, lest the things that depart from your heart all the days of your life, or these things that depart from your heart, lest these things depart from your heart all the days of your life, and you shall make them known to your children and to your children's children. So this isn't a one-time deal. You continue to teach this. the day you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, when the Lord said to me, assemble for the people for me, and I will let them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and they may teach their children. So teaching their children this. And you approached and stood at the foot of the mountain, and the mountain burned with fire up in the midst of the heavens, with darkness, a cloud, and opaque darkness. The Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but saw no image, just a voice. That word, utmuna, that means image, right? They saw no image. Why would God say they saw no image and tell Israel to teach it to their children, even when they go into the land of Israel, as we'll see? And he told you his covenant, which he commanded you to do, the 10 commandments, which he inscribed them on 2 tablet stones. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and ordinances, so that you should do them in the land to which you are crossing to possess. Once again, this isn't a one-time deal. God wasn't saying you saw no image and that's the only time that's going to happen. He's saying you teach this for all generations, even when you get into the land. You shall watch yourselves very well. This is very important. For you did not see any image, no tumuna, any image on the day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb from the midst of the fire, lest you become corrupt and make for yourselves a graven image, the representation of any form, the likeness of a male or a female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that is flies in heaven, the likeness of anything that crawls on the ground, likeness of any fish that is in the waters and beneath the earth, lest you lift your eyes up to the heaven and see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the host of heaven, which the Lord your God has assigned to all peoples under the entire heaven, and be drawn away to prostrate yourselves before them and worship them. God is saying, do not worship any form. You saw no form at Horeb. Therefore, and look at this is basically a summary of the creation story backwards, right? Man was the final creation of, that God made, right? And it goes backwards from man all the way to the moon, the sun, and the stars, right? So, when you look at this in full context, it's clear that God is saying, don't worship me in any form. Now, when you bring this up to a Christian, immediately they will focus on the part that says, make yourselves a graven image, and they'll say, well, I didn't make Jesus. He's not a graven image. Well, did man create the moon, the sun, and the stars? So this is sort of the progression of how it will go when you challenge them on this, is you'll say, well, look, it says you saw no image and you shouldn't worship God in any form. They go, so then they'll ignore this verse. And then when you bring this to their attention, they'll say, oh, well, Jesus just always existed and he always was. And he never said to worship, something different. It's like, no one worshiped Jesus in the Tanakh. You cannot prove anyone worshiped Jesus in the Tanakh. Right? It doesn't say the only exception is my son, who's also the pre-incarnate Jesus angel who appears every time an angel without a name appears. That must be an exception to this. You saw no image, so don't worship any form. That one you have to worship because that's actually a Jesus angel. No, that is eisegesis, eisegesis. If you actually care about God's commands to Israel, then you will recognize, instead of putting on Jesus glasses and looking at Genesis 18 and, Exodus 3 and Joshua 5 and all these pre-incarnate Jesus angels that are never referred to as such, right? Those are angels. They speak on behalf of God, just like prophets speak on behalf of God. It doesn't mean that those angels must be God. If you actually care about God's word, you will recognize that this passage here explicitly forbids the worship of any form. I don't care if you make the argument, well, you're limiting God. You're saying he can't turn into a man? He can't take on flesh? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying he wouldn't do that because God is not a liar, right? Numbers 23:19, God doesn't lie, right? So, if God doesn't lie, then when God says, you saw no form, and then says not to worship any form, whether it be man-made or God-made, Adam, the first man, wasn't created by human hands, right? So if the Christian insists that it only refers to human hand creations, then I guess Adam and Eve are free reign to worship, right? That's why it's silly for them to limit it to man-made objects, but they only do that because they're trying to make excuses for Jesus. Of course they would do something like that. But can God take on the form of a golden calf if he wanted to? I guess, but we know he wouldn't based on this passage. So don't fall into the trap when a Christian tries to say silly things like, well, you're limiting God. Yeah, well, you're literally calling God a liar by claiming Jesus is God, chas v'sholem. So anyway, we'll make more videos about that, so get excited. But the Lord took you and brought you out of the iron crucible, out of Egypt, to be a people of his possession as of this day. And the Lord was angry with me because of you, and he swore that he would not cross the Jordan, that I would not cross the Jordan, and that I would not come into the good land the Lord your God has given as an inheritance. For I will die in this land, I will not cross the Jordan. You, however, will cross, and you will possess the land. Beware lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make yourselves a graven image, the likeness of anything which the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a zealous God. When you beget children and your children and children's children, and you will be long established in the land, you will become corrupt and make a graven image, the likeness of anything, and do evil in the eyes of the Lord your God, and provoke him to anger. I shall call as witness to you this very day, or I call as witness to you this very day, the heaven and the earth, that you will speedily and utterly perish from the land which you will cross the Jordan to possess it, and you will not prolong your days upon it, but will be utterly destroyed, and the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will remain few in number among the nations to where the Lord your God will lead you. So that's describing today. And there you worship gods, man's handiwork, wood and stone, which shall neither see, hear, nor eat or smell, right? So this is describing curses, And from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him, and you will seek him with all your heart and all your soul. So a reference back to Leviticus 26, right? You don't need Jesus' blood. You just need to humble your heart and confess your sin. And when you are distressed and all these things will happen upon you in the end of days, you will return to the Lord your God and obey him, right? So this is talking about that future restoration, which also is described in Deuteronomy 30. So that is how we reestablish our, ultimate connection with God on a national level, and no Jesus blood is required. For the Lord your God is a merciful God, and he will not let you loose or destroy you, neither will he forget his covenant with your fathers, which he swore to them. So that it's an eternal covenant. Israel will never be completely destroyed. For ask now regarding the early days that were before you, since the day that God created man upon the earth, from one end of the heavens and the other end of the heavens, wherever there was anything like this great thing, or was the likes of it heard? Did ever a people hear God's voice speaking out of the midst of the fire as you have heard and live? Right? It's a miracle that has never been really topped, Or has God performed miracles to come and take him, a nation, from the midst of any other nation with trials and signs and with wonders and with war and with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm and with great awesome deeds, as all that the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? You have been shown in order to know that the Lord, he is God. There's none else besides him. From the heavens he let you hear his voice to instruct you, and upon the earth he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your forefathers and chose their seed after him, he brought you out of Egypt and before him with great strength, to drive out from before you nations greater and stronger than you, to bring you and give you their land for an inheritance as this day. And you shall know this day and consider it in your heart, that the Lord your God, in heaven alone and upon the earth there is none else. The Lord, he is God in heaven. Yeah. And you shall observe his statutes and his commandments, which I command you this day, that it may be well with you and your children after you, and that you may prolong your days upon the earth. which the Lord your God has given you forever. No, it's not taken away with Jesus fulfilling it for you or any nonsense like that. Then Moses decided to separate 3 cities on the side of the Jordan towards sunrise, so that a murderer might flee there who murders his fellow man unintentionally but did not hate him in the past. He may flee to those cities so that he may live. Bezer in the desert, in the plain country of the Reubenites, and Ramoth in the Gilead and Gadites, and Golan and the Menashites. And this is the teaching which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies and ordinances which Moses spoke to the children of Israel when they went out of Egypt, on the side of the Jordan, in the valley, opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sichon, land of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel smote after they went out of Egypt, and they possessed the land of Og and the king of Bashan and the 2 kings of the Amorites, who were on the side of Jordan towards the sunrise, and Or, which is the bank of the river of Arnon, to Mount Sion, which is Hermon, and all the plains across the Jordan eastward as far as the sea of the plain under the waterfalls of the hill. The 4th Aliyah. Now, here's something interesting. We're going to get to a very interesting contrast here. We can show the sleight of hand that Christians could play. I've never seen them use this particular sleight of hand, but if they wanted to, I guess they could. And Moses called all of Israel and said to them, "Hear, O Israel, the statutes and ordinances which I speak in your ears this day. Learn them and observe them, to do them. The Lord our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. Not with our forefathers did he make this covenant, but with us, we, all of whom are here alive today." Now here's the verse. "Face to face the Lord spoke to you at the mountain out of the midst of the fire." Face to face. Okay, so in the previous chapter it said you saw no form, right, when God spoke to you out of the midst of the fire at Horeb. Here it says face to face. So if a Christian is going to play the great Jesus angel hunt with you, right, they could go, well, they even saw the face of God at, in Deuteronomy 5. Well, we know that they didn't see an image because we explicitly saw in Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 12 and 19, and 15, that they did not see an image. They did not see God's face, right? And we also know whatever that means, only Moses is capable of seeing any sort of, whatever that means, Temunat Hashem, right? Only Moses would know. But of course, when it comes to, the scripture, the Christian is insistent on trying to deify, right, all of these, encounters of angels and whatever. So I'm saying, just to show you an example of a way that a Christian, I've never seen a Christian actually use this, but if they wanted to, they could play this sleight of hand here and say that Israelites saw God's face at, in Deuteronomy 4, if they take this verse out of context. So this is just a way to demonstrate the, disingenuous nature of the great Jesus angel hunt. Who's speaking, the angel or God, right? Did they see God's face at Horeb or not? No, they saw no image. So this is an expression, right? When it says that Jacob saw the face of Elohim and still lived, it's not saying that Jacob saw the face of God, right? That would contradict in Exodus 33 when it says, "No man may see my face and live." So he didn't see God's face. He saw an angel. It says it in Hosea chapter 12, right? But no, the Christian just wants to deify angels and ignore the obvious. So anyway, and I stood between the Lord and you at that time to tell you the word of the Lord, for you were afraid of the fire, and you did not go up the mountain, saying, "For I am the Lord your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods in my presence. You shall not make for yourself." Right? So this is a unique Parsha because it has the 10 commandments in it. So, just like Parsha Yitro was the other one that we have. So this is another time when we have them. "You shall not make for yourselves a graven image, nor the likeness which is in the heavens above, which is on the earth below, or in the water beneath the earth. You shall not prostrate yourself before them, nor worship them. I, the Lord your God, am a zealous God. It doesn't make an exception for pre-incarnate Jesus angels, which aren't even described anywhere in the Tanakh. But, everywhere there's an anonymous angel, it must be some sort of God angel in the minds of silly Christians. But anyway, Deuteronomy 4 proves otherwise, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons, upon the third and the fourth generations of those who hate me. And I perform loving kindness to thousands of generations to those who love me and to those who keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold blameless anyone who takes his name in vain. You shall keep the Sabbath day to sanctify it, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you may work and perform all your labor, but on the seventh day is Shabbat, and to the Lord your God you shall perform no labor, neither you, your son, your daughter, your maidservant, your manservant, maidservant, your ox, your donkey, your livestock, nor the stranger who is within your cities, in order that your manservant, your maidservant may rest like you. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that the Lord your God took you out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore the Lord your God commanded you to observe this Sabbath day. Honor your father and mother, as the Lord your God commanded you, in order that your days be lengthened, so that it may go well with you in the land that the Lord your God is giving to you. You shall not murder, you shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, and you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor shall you desire your neighbor's house, his field, his manservant, his maidservant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. All right, the fifth aliyah. The Lord spoke these words to the entire assembly at the mountain, out of the midst of the fire, the cloud, the opaque darkness, with a great voice which did not cease. And he inscribed them on 2 stone tablets and gave them to me. And it was when you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness of the mountain was burning with fire, that you approached me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders, and you said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and greatness. We have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We saw this day that God speaks with man, yet man remains alive. So now, why should we die? For this great fire will consume us. If we continue to hear the voice of the Lord our God anymore, we will die. For who is there of all flesh who heard the voice of living God speaking from the midst of the fire, as we have lived? You approached and hear all that the Lord our God will say, and you speak to us all that the Lord our God will speak to you, and we will hear and do. This is the famous, it says Vishamanu Asinu. Okay, yeah. And the Lord heard the sound of your words when you spoke to me, and the Lord said to me, I have heard the sound of the words of this people, that they have spoken to you, and they have done well in all that they have spoken. Would that their hearts be like this, to fear me and to keep my commandments all the days, that it might be well with them and their children forever. So say to them, return to your tents. But as for you, stand here with me, and I will speak to you all the commandments, the statutes, and ordinances which you will teach them, that they may do them in the land which I give them to possess. Keep them to perform them as the Lord your God has commanded you, and do not turn aside either from the right or the left. In all the way which the Lord your God has commanded you, you shall go, in order that you may live, and that it may be well with you, and so that you may prolong your days in the land you will possess. And here we go on the 6th chapter. And this is the commandment, the statutes, and the ordinances that the Lord your God commanded to teach you to perform in the land that you are about to pass, to possess it, in order that you fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and commandments that I command you, your son and your son's son, all the days of your life, in order that your days may be lengthened. And you shall therefore hearken, O Israel, and be sure to perform, so that it be good for you, so that you may increase exceedingly, just as the Lord your God, the God of your fathers, spoke to you, a land flowing with milk and honey. And here we have the Shema, Okay, this is the Shema. Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God. The Lord is one. And this is the V'ahavta. Every Orthodox Jew, or even less religious Jew, knows this. You shall love the Lord with all your God, with all your heart and all your soul and all your means. V'ahavta et Hashem Elokecha b'chol levacha b'chol nafshecha b'chol me'odecha v'hayu advarim ha'ela asher uchim mitzacha hayom al levavecha. And these words which I command you this day shall be upon your heart. Why is this so significant? Because even the Mosaic covenant is a covenant of the heart. The new covenant of Jeremiah is not new because it's a covenant of the heart. This verse proves that even the Mosaic covenant is a covenant of the heart. But here's the difference. In the next verse it says, Vishinantam levanacha v'dibarta bam, b'shivtecha b'mivtecha l'atach v'derech v'shabecha ukumecha. And you shall teach them to your sons. That's the key. You shall teach them, right? And then in the new covenant of Jeremiah, it says no longer will I have to teach, will one have to teach each other to know the Lord, for they will all know me, from the least of them to the greatest of them. That's the difference that the new covenant will be. So the very fact that apologetics exists in the Christian world, or Jews for Jesus, trying to teach Jews about, Jesus, who they claim is the Lord and Savior, chas v'sholom, that proves that we are not under the new covenant today. Because if we were, we wouldn't have to teach each other. There wouldn't be apologetics, and we would all know, from the least of us to the greatest of us, chas v'sholom, that we would believe it would be Jesus, because clearly it's not. Anyway, you shall teach them to your sons and speak of them when you sit in your house and when you walk on your way and when you lie down and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign upon your hand, and they shall be ornaments between your eyes, right? And you shall inscribe them upon your doorposts and of your house and upon your gates, right? So this is referring to tefillin and mezuzot, right? Put the phylacteries, on your arm, the black boxes, and wrap them, wrap on your arm, and you put on your head tefillin. That is what that's describing there. And then, of course, the mezuzot on our doorposts. And then we have the second part of the Shema. We have, it shall be when the Lord your God brings you to the land he swore to your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob, to give you great and good cities that you did not build, and the houses of all the good things that you did not fill, and the hewn cisterns that you did not hew, and the vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant, and you will eat. And actually, this is a different. This is different from the second paragraph of the Shema. Actually, I was wrong. It starts out v'haya im Shema. Yeah, there's a different one. This isn't the one that we say. Beware lest you forget the Lord who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall fear the Lord your God and worship him and swear by his name. You shall not go after other gods, the gods of people who are around you. For the Lord your God is a zealous God among you, lest the wrath of the Lord your God be kindled against you and destroy you off the face of the earth. You shall not try the Lord your God as you tried him in Massah, diligently keep the commandments of the Lord your God and his testimonies and statutes which he has commanded you. And you shall do what is proper in the eyes of the Lord, in order that it may be well with you, and you may come to possess the good land which the Lord swore to your forefathers, to drive out the enemies from before you, as the Lord has spoken. If your son asks you in time, saying, what are these testimonies and statutes and ordinances which the Lord our God has commanded you? Sounds like the Passover Seder, right? With the 4 sons. You shall say to your son, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Lord took us out of Egypt with a strong hand, and the Lord gave us signs and wonders, great and terrible, upon Egypt, upon Pharaoh, and upon his household before our eyes. And he brought us out of there in order that he might bring us and give us the land which he swore to our fathers. And the Lord commanded us to perform all these statutes and to fear our God for our good all the days, to keep us alive as of this day. And it will be for our merit that we keep to observe all these commandments before the Lord our God as he has commanded us. No Jesus blood required. All right, this is the final aliyah to finish it off. When the Lord your God brings you into the land which you are coming to possess it, he will cast away many nations from before you, the Hittites, the Girgashites, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and 7 nations more numerous and powerful than you. And then the Lord your God will deliver them to you, and you shall smite them, you shall utterly destroy them, neither shall you make a covenant with them, nor be gracious to them. You shall not intermarry with them, you shall not give your daughter to his son, and you shall not take his daughter for your son. Everybody read this if you want to know the explanation of why being Jewish goes through your mother and not through your father. This explains it. So also I've done videos on that before. So, for he will turn away your son from following me, and they will worship the gods of others, and the wrath of the Lord will be kindled against you, and he will quickly destroy you. But so shall you do to them. You shall demolish their altars, smash their monuments, cut down their Asherim trees, and burn their graven images with fire. For you are a holy people to the Lord your God. Lord your God has chosen you to be his treasured people out of all the peoples upon the face of the earth. Not because you are more numerous than any other people did the Lord delight and choose you, for you are the least of all the peoples, but because the Lord's love for you, and because he keeps the oath he swore to your forefathers. The Lord took you out with a strong hand and redeemed you from the house of bondage, from the hand of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Know therefore that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God who keeps the covenant of loving kindness with those who love him and keep his commandments to 1,000 generations. And he repays those who hate them to their face to cause them to perish. He will not delay the one who hates him, but he will repay him to his face. You shall therefore observe the commandments, the statutes, and the ordinances which I command you this day to do. I hope this video has been a blessing to you all. Shalom Aleichem.